Sentinel Prime didn't betray the Autobots in Transformers Dark of the Moon because he was evil. And that's the part that makes his decision more unsettling than people usually give it credit for. If you look at how the movie frames him on the surface, it's easy to reduce him to just another antagonist who turns on the heroes for power. But that's not actually what's happening. His actions aren't driven by ego, revenge, or even personal gain. They're driven by a very specific belief about survival, and more importantly, about what Cybertron needs in order to continue existing. Before his betrayal is revealed, Sentinel is introduced as a figure of authority and legacy. He isn't just another Autobot, he's the former leader, the one who came before Optimus Prime. That position matters because it immediately establishes that his perspective is shaped by a different time, a different version of the war, and a different understanding of what victory even looks like. Optimus leads with ideals, Sentinel leads with outcomes. That difference is what everything else builds on. When Sentinel is revived, the expectation is that he'll reinforce what the Autobots already represent. Instead, what the film actually shows is more restrained. He takes in the situation, reconnects with Optimus, and processes the loss of Cybertron, but he doesn't openly reveal his intentions yet. That matters, because it means his plan isn't something he comes up with on Earth. It already exists. His priorities were decided long before he ever arrived, and Earth doesn't change them. The key to understanding his betrayal is the deal he made with the Decepticons, specifically with Megatron. That alliance isn't impulsive, and it isn't a last-minute decision. Sentinel knew Cybertron was dying. He knew the Autobots were losing ground, and he came to the conclusion that continuing the war the way it was being fought would only lead to extinction. From his perspective, there were only two outcomes left: continue fighting and lose everything, or change the terms of the conflict entirely. He chose the second option. The pillars are what make that possible. They're not just a weapon, they're a solution. They allow Cybertron to be physically restored, but that restoration requires resources, and that's where Earth comes in. This is where Sentinel's logic becomes clear, even if it's difficult to accept. He doesn't see Earth as something to protect. He sees it as something to use, not out of cruelty, but out of prioritization. In his mind, Cybertron comes first, and everything else is secondary. That's what separates him from Optimus. Optimus believes in coexistence. He believes that protecting Earth and preserving Autobot values are part of the same mission. Sentinel doesn't share that belief. To him, survival justifies compromise. If saving Cybertron requires working with former enemies, he'll do it. If it requires sacrificing another world, he'll accept that cost. He isn't ignoring the consequences of his actions, he's deciding that they're necessary. His confrontation with Optimus makes that difference explicit. When he kills Ironhide, it isn't framed as a moment of chaos or loss of control. It's deliberate. He removes a threat to his plan and continues forward without hesitation. Then he explains himself, not in anger, but with certainty. He doesn't try to justify his actions emotionally, he presents them as logical. Cybertron must be restored. The war must end, and this is the only way to make that happen. That mindset carries through the entire third act. Sentinel doesn't waver, doesn't second-guess himself, and doesn't show regret. Even when the plan begins to collapse, even when Megatron's control weakens and the situation becomes unstable, Sentinel stays committed to the outcome he chose. That consistency is important because it reinforces that this isn't a temporary alignment or a moment of desperation. It's a fully formed belief system. What makes his character effective isn't that he betrays the Autobots, it's that his reasoning is structured in a way that almost works. If you remove the emotional attachment to Earth and look at the situation purely from a survival standpoint, his plan follows a clear line of logic. A dying world needs resources. Those resources have to come from somewhere, and if the alternative is extinction, then compromise becomes acceptable. The problem is that his logic removes everything else in the process. By reducing the conflict to survival alone, Sentinel eliminates the values that defined the Autobots in the first place. Loyalty, protection, and the idea of fighting for something beyond your own survival all become irrelevant under his approach. That's why his betrayal feels so severe. It isn't just a change in allegiance, it's a rejection of what the Autobots represent. By the end of the film, that difference is resolved in the simplest way possible. Optimus doesn't debate Sentinel's philosophy or try to change his perspective. He stops him. Because at that point, the conflict isn't about who's right in theory, it's about what kind of outcome is acceptable. Sentinel is willing to sacrifice Earth to save Cybertron. Optimus isn't. That's the real reason behind the betrayal. Sentinel didn't turn against the Autobots because he lost his way. He chose a different one.